IELTS Writing Task 1 Academic Band 8 answer. We're going to look at a multi-task type. We've got this bar chart here, which is change over time, and we've got a pie chart here that is just one period of time. So normally with these bar charts, we're interested in what's the trend, right? Change over time, what's the trend? And here, what's the highest and lowest proportions? The other thing that's interesting about this task is this here, 2026. So we've got a future time period, and we need to take care of this in order to get a high score. And when you see this future time period, you need to establish where does the historical period end and when does the future time period start. And we can see it in the instructions up here, 2016. It doesn't happen in this task, but just, well, I mean, it still could happen with this task. A student might assume that, okay, maybe here's 2020, and so it's 2020 now, so 2020 and back is the historical period, and then 2020 forward, so 2021, I guess, is the future period. But that's not accurate. It's this is the historic. This is the end of the historic period here, and really everything after this is a forecast. Well, we don't have, it's not a line graph. We don't actually have any information in here. But just imagine if it was a line graph, then everything after 2016 is a prediction. In any case, here's our prediction. So we must take care of this in order to score well. So I'm going to go through the 4 criteria and show you why this is good enough to get to 8. And I don't give a lot of 8s, and it could be higher than 8 in some areas. I always like to think of, I mean, 8's not the limit, but in terms of the feedback I give, it's normally what I would give in a real test circumstances. Yeah, I have given 9s, but I would say it's like a 1 in 1,000 situation where I'm going to give a 9. 8.5, maybe a bit more common. And by the way, this is submitted to me by Chandra. He has sent me this task to correct, and it's almost perfect. I don't think I could do much better myself. Let's have a look first. So first of all, we're going to look at the task achievement, and I want to go through what I really like about this task achievement. Now, task achievement, we're looking at the number of words. He's slightly over this, but a really excellent writer might go above this. I put this as a guide for most writers and encourage people not to go too far over this so that you can finish on time. The overall summary is really important. There's a really good one here. We're going to be looking at the extent the data is covered and highlighting, and also the accuracy. There's no inaccuracy. I've checked that already. So let's go back at the task and look at some of the specifics. So I really like the overall summary. We've got 2 charts, and we must provide a summary of each chart. So what we've got here, by the way, if you want to see the written version, I'll put a link under the description in YouTube. But I really like this overall summary. There's a really good summary of what happens here, that it triples. Okay, so it's from about 7 to 20, so it triples. This is really good. And then remember I said this future time period's really important, and that's covered here. Let's have a look at that more specifically. In the future, however, import levels are estimated to decrease. So I really like how this has been covered. This chart has been covered really, really well. And then we also need to take care of the pie chart in this overall summary as well. We must summarize the pie chart. We can't just summarize one of the charts. And so let's see what we've got I'll mention this later. So we know which country exported the highest. China exported the highest percentage of seafood in 2016 to the USA. It's good putting this year in too, because we've got multiple years here, but only 1 year here. I suppose if you wanted to make another comment, you could mention the lowest, but it's really messy with this task, because the lowest happens to be other countries, and you have to be really careful with how you deal with this. I wouldn't mention this. Another reason why I wouldn't mention it, the overall summary is also already plenty long, because we've got a summary about this and a summary about this. So I think just mentioning the highest one is the most important thing to say there. Let me tell you some other things that I like that have contributed to a high score for task achievement. Another aspect of task achievement is about precision, and here we've got exactly 20 billion, and here we've got about 6 billion. So if we have a look in 1986, we can't determine the exact level. We can only determine the exact level when it exactly hits these crosses. So this candidate is spot on with the way that they're reporting data. Here we're using language of approximation, about 6 billion, because we're not exactly certain. It could be 6.1 billion for all we know. Here, exactly 20 billion. It's reporting this one here because it hits the line and we can see it's exactly 20 billion. So there's sort of a rule for IELTS. If it hits the line, we know exactly what it is. If it doesn't, we should use language of approximation. The writer has left out this figure, I think. Oh, no, sorry, that's in there. 6 billion to 10 billion. So it's basically covered everything. I think that's correct because we've got, let's see, we've got 4 and then 7. We've got 11 pieces of data. We should be able to cover them all. 12, we should be able to cover them all. If you had 20, we might start to leave out some less important data. He's covered everything. And so this precision is important, and this about the estimation here and the prediction, the acknowledgement that this is a prediction. This is really important. If you mention this like it's a fact, like it will decrease, that is no good. You have to mention it using language of forecasting. Right? There's a link between task achievement and vocabulary. I hope you can see it. We have to be using the right vocabulary. So this language that I'm excited about is also going to help the writer's score for vocabulary as well. So don't think that each criteria is isolated from the other ones. There's a close connection. The other thing that I really like about this task that I think's been done really well is dealing with this. You must address this. This is really important. It's the lowest category and it's other countries. And you have to write it in a careful way, because if you're not careful, it can sound like more than one slice. Perhaps we can say this is one slice. All the other countries are one slice. And if you don't word it correctly, it could sound like it's a few slices. It's referring to a few slices. So let's see how the candidate refers to it. However, other unspecified countries accounted for the lowest proportion. So that's really good. Again, a lot of it's to do with the language. The language is important. People don't always understand this, but the language, the vocabulary supports the task achievement by being precise, by using language of precision, language of approximation, language of prediction. We enhance the task achievement. So this is what's so great about the task achievement. It's not just that he's covered the data, it's that he's really used the right language in the coverage of the data. And so that's why it's worthy of 8. I could consider 9. Really, in considering 9, I have to think, could a native writer do better? Well, a lot of native writers would do worse. A lot of native writers would struggle to get 7 for task achievement here. 8's a fabulous score. It could be as good as a 9. Not only the vocabulary assists the score, the way, I don't want to comment on it too much, but the cohesion and coherence on this is excellent too. The way I'm going to go into that next, so I won't say too much, but the way that the candidate signals what each paragraph is about, basically if it's coherent, we can see the task achievement better. If we're struggling to make sense of what's written, it gets hard to see the quality of the task achievement. I can really see the quality of the task achievement. This is really well laid out. This statement here, overall, I know this is the overall summary. I know to look here. I know here it is. I know this is about the bar graph. I know this is about the pie chart. Let's sort of stop there on the task achievement and let's have a look at the cohesion and coherence a bit more in detail. Well, first of all, I like that the introduction has an introduction to what the 2 charts are about. This is good. Both of these are introduced really well. I can understand what the data is regarding. Then I really like the overall summary going here. I'm a big fan of it. If any of you have had your work corrected by me, you'll often see a comment about this. I like this one big solid paragraph. What I'm not so keen on, what I see a lot, is this. One small paragraph to introduce the tasks and then the overall summary in another paragraph, either here or even worse at the end of the task. It's not ideal. Is it wrong? No, it's not wrong at all to write like this, but it's much better to write like this, and it helps the score. I don't think this is why it's an 8 just because of this, but it contributes to it. The other thing that I really look for, I want to know why we have these 2 body paragraphs. Right? I shouldn't have to guess. How can the reader communicate this at the start of the paragraph? As shown in the bar graph, I can know this is about the bar graph. Turning to the pie chart, I know we've finished talking about this one and we're now on this one. This makes it so easy for the examiner. This is so easy to mark because I can see where the information is, and I believe it makes it easier for the writer to focus too. So I really like this. What else do I really like? I like there to be some logic within the paragraph. All right, I like some logic. In this case, it's a line graph. The most obvious logic is to just go in chronological order, which is what the writer has done from start to finish. It doesn't really make sense to hop around the years. There might be someone tempted to start here. Oh, this was the highest. Oh, but it was much lower here. In fact, it was the lowest. And in the future, don't jump around from start to finish with a line graph. This is exactly the logic that I like to see within this paragraph for change over time. And then what should our logic be here? Obviously, we can't do it from a time perspective. So what should it be? Highest to lowest. It could be lowest to highest too, I suppose, but usually highest to lowest, which is actually quite nice with this chart. It just moves around in a clockwise fashion. And so that's what we've got here. We've got the highest all the way down to the lowest. So I really, really like that about this task. I changed this here. In addition, creates a well, it's a more major linking phrase than also sort of a minor linking phrase. In addition's much stronger. I'd use also, if there's still information about the same chart, I might use also. But since we're going on to another chart, I want a more significant linking phrase here. There's a very minor issue there. Very, very minor. So when I'm considering the score, I could still consider 9 for this task. It's easily an 8. I could consider a 9, and this really isn't enough to stop it. Easily an 8. And as I said, when you have excellent cohesion and coherence, it makes it so much easier for the reader, and it starts to increase the other scores. So just like I was saying earlier about task achievement being influenced by other areas, it's the same with a cohesion and coherence. It boosts other areas, and other areas contribute to the cohesion and coherence as well. If there were lots of mistakes with vocabulary and grammar in here, it'd be harder to understand. Coherence is lower. Coherence, if something's coherent, it's easy to understand. So another reason that supports a high score here is that it's just so easy to read. There aren't any real issues. Let's now take a look at vocabulary. Well, when it comes to vocabulary, I've mentioned this before, that we need the language of forecasting. He's shown me that he's got language for forecasting. As an examiner, as soon as I see a future time period, I'm suspecting a lot of candidates are not going to do well with it. So I like this. I like the language of approximation and precision here. So these help the score. Another thing I'm going to look at when considering the vocabulary is whether the task instructions have been paraphrased. This is where you want to show the examiner your range of vocabulary, that you can rephrase some of these words and that you can also move words around in the sentence so that you're not just repeating the words that you're given. So there's quite good paraphrasing here. For starters, bar chart, we can just, and pie chart, we can just say the graphs. So we can paraphrase that. These 3 years, we don't need them all, just mention the first and last one. That's really good in the prediction. Forecast has been changed to prediction. That's good. Shows to illustrate. Geographical structures, the countries. Always just check they are countries. Yes, these are countries. Sometimes they'll put areas. So if you see East Asia, you can't say countries then, but that's not here. So it's accurate. That's the other thing. It's got to be accurate. I like the use of tripled here. A lot of people know doubled, but not everyone knows tripled, so that's helpful. We've got doubled down here. Market dominating is useful here rather than just saying the highest. Total annual seafoods useful here rather than just saying the year. They're imports to the USA, but we can rephrase this to exported from Indonesia. Accounted for is a useful phrase. This is helpful. And this is a great phrase to use. I see words like witnessed. Other unspecified countries witnessed. Did they? Did they really witness it? It's okay. There's nothing wrong with witness, but accounted for is even better. And then we've got superlative lowest. So we've got low, lower, lowest. Lowest is correct. Some of you might look at this and think, well, these are words that I already know. There's nothing really truly amazing about any of the words here. Well, there doesn't need to be. You should use language effectively to communicate a message, and that's what's happened here. And it's the precision that I really like here. So a lot of people misunderstand what they should be doing with vocabulary. They think they should find some rare, amazing piece of vocabulary that the examiner is just going to be blown away with. They're going to read something like plethora and think, wow, you know that word, I'm giving you 9. But really what it is, it comes back to what I was saying earlier about how all the 4 criteria support each other. If I can read this report easily and feel that it's structured well and covers all the data well, precisely, something's got to be right with the vocabulary. And then I can look and I can see, well, yeah, we've got tripled, we've got doubled, we've got market dominating, total annual, accounted for. There's a lot to like about this language, but it's not just the words, it's the way the words get used to communicate a message effectively. And this is what a lot of people overlook. They focus on some nice big fluffy words, but instead of communicating the message more effectively, they actually cause confusion and the need for the reader to read and reread and try and guess and think what the writer is trying to express. When vocabulary is used well and naturally, it enhances the communication. It results in a high score for vocabulary, but it also enhances the score for cohesion and coherence. It's coherent, it's easy to understand, and task achievement, because it achieves the task better when the language is precise and accurate. All right, let's have a look now at grammar and see what we like about grammar. So when I'm looking at grammar, the first thing that I'm going to be looking for are mistakes. So those are easy for the examiner to work with, right? Mistakes. What mistakes are there? Whoa, here's one. The US. So countries don't normally have the, but there's a few that do need the, and the US is one, the UK is another one, the EU is another one. Those are the only ones you're likely to need for IELTS. So we've found this huge mistake. Of course, I'm joking. And is it possible that a native writer might make this mistake? Yeah, it's quite possible. It's quite possible that they could. Oh, I missed one here, you see. Actually, this one's all right. Because US here is kind of like an adjective. It's describing the imports, US seafood imports. So we don't actually need it here, but we do here because it's operating as a noun, as the country here. So that's interesting as well, isn't it? That's why articles are extremely tricky, and that's why I don't look at this and think, whoa, huge error, and score comes tumbling down. No, it's a very minor error. This is not an error at all because this is actually correct. I just changed it. Really, it's an aspect of, potential aspect of cohesion and coherence. So, when it comes to grammar, these are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the, well, I put articles here, and they're not a major error. It's just that everybody makes mistakes with these. Almost everybody. Native speakers make mistakes with these. So I could say, well, there's an error. There's one error with these. It's really minor though. The sentence structures are all correct. And then I got to think about this. Has the writer used a range of sentences, especially complex sentences? Now, complex sentences are where we have a dependent and independent clause. Let's have a look and see in particular where these complex sentences are. So what I'm identifying here is where have we got dependent clauses? Where have we got unfinished ideas? And if you imagine you are reading them out, or imagine if you're talking to somebody, these are incomplete ideas as shown in the bar graph. And then if you only had that piece of information, you'd be thinking yes. You'd be waiting. If someone was speaking to you and they said as shown in the bar graph, you'd be waiting for the rest of the sentence, right? So this is where we're getting the complex sentences. And note how we get these with these introductory phrases for these paragraphs. This one, over the following 20 years, and then we get extra information about those 20 years. Same thing here. I mean, despite, so as is often used in these sentences, despite something, despite the past growth. So we don't have a complete idea. We need to wait for the next clause to get the complete idea. Turning to the pie chart for US seafood imports. So we know there's more information coming. Which is a relative pronoun. These are useful for forming complex sentences. Which, that, where, when, who. So these are really useful. I just want to make another comment here about this. I'm just noticing it. We're sort of talking about the major and minor linking phrases. Here it should be a major one, here's a minor one. Why? Because it's just carrying on with some additional information about this pie chart, whereas here we're actually switching charts, which is why it's slightly better. It's not a big difference, right? But this is interesting. So if you wanted to, if earlier you thought, wow, that point I really didn't catch, we'll try and understand it now. We need a major linking phrase here because two different charts. This is still the same chart, just carrying on. So that's fine. So finally, when I come to grade the task, I have to give an 8 here at least, because all of these things have been done well. And really think of it this way. How can you, if you do everything well, how can you not get an 8? If you do all these things, if you do the same thing in your writing, why can't you get 8? At least for task achievement. You may not have perfect English, but why can't you get the 8? And possibly the same here, although, as I said, if you have too many mistakes with vocab and grammar, the coherence might get lowered. But 8 here, we've got the logical separation of data into paragraphs. We've got body paragraphs starting with a phrase that tells us what the paragraph's about. We've got logical paragraph development, the line chart focusing on the time order, the pie chart highest to lowest. The linking phrases you use well, just that really, really minor thing about the in addition and also. We've got to give 8 here because there aren't any errors and the vocabulary has been used really well to convey a precise message. And I'm willing to overlook the and give 8 here. So I would expect this to get no lower than 8 and possibly higher. It could be that the examiner might feel some of these criteria could be worth more than 8, but I'm not really going to go into that in this video. I just want to say it's at least an 8 for all 4 criteria. Okay, so I hope you've found that useful, and if you enjoy or find it useful, enjoy would be interesting. Maybe somebody does. Maybe someone's not even studying IELTS, but they find this so fascinating they want to watch it. Maybe that's less likely, but if you think this is useful and you can improve your own writing, then I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and follow some of my upcoming videos. I'm Mike Watty, IELTS examiner, IELTS tutor and author. If you'd like me to correct your IELTS writing, please click on the join button at the end of this video.